As we move into Module 2, we're going to move on to the Battle of Baghdad. So with Module 1, the purpose of that module was to kind of get us introduced to the Iraq War and think about the major players and, the architects of war, and just to kind of get the ball rolling in terms of introducing us to the time period. So Module 2 then gets us into one of the first major milestones of the Iraq War, which is Baghdad and the Battle of Baghdad. And that happens not long after March 20th, 2003, which was the beginning of the Iraq War. It happens, and I do give dates in the overview, and you always, like I said before, you always want to make sure you look at the overview because it provides historical and political context for every week. But I do talk about the battle lasted from April 3rd through 12th in 2003. So that's when the United States went in and bombed Baghdad, and that's called the quote-unquote Battle of Baghdad, the capital of Iraq, and Baghdad subsequently fell. So I did title Module 2 and Module 3 are, you'll notice they're both called Stuff Happens Part 1 and Stuff Happens Part 2, and that's because they both kind of focus on Baghdad as a kind of central thematic, or not thematic, but more of kind of a location for, or even like it's a major locus of area, and that's because it's such a massive part of the Iraq War. So that's why there are two modules that are named after it. And Stuff Happens comes from something Donald Rumsfeld, the SecDef, said about the looting that happened in response to or in the aftermath of the Battle of Baghdad. And I have information on that here in the overview. So make sure you go over this overview here. In the readings and resources section for Module 2, you will see that we are reading our first official hard copy required text. You can't really see it because I've got a blurred background, but I promise you this is the Pride of Baghdad. I have my copy here. So we're looking at that, written by Brian K. Vaughan and illustrated by Nico. I never know how to say his last name, Henry Sean. I might be saying it wrong. So that's one of the things we're reading. That's the only hard copy required text we're reading. And then this week is one of the weeks we're jumping a little bit backwards in time and looking at also the Gulf War from 1990 to 1991 with June Jordan. And so you have here the poem that she wrote called The Bombing of Baghdad, an excerpt from her speech, and an excerpt from a scholarly article or a secondary source that talks about June Jordan as well. So those sources are here. There's some optional sources for you to watch, just as I provided in Module 1. Again, this is from the Armchair Historian. It's, again, just that what happened in the Gulf War from a political, military, tactical perspective. It's not exceptionally long, but if you're interested in finding out or getting more information on that from the quote-unquote first Gulf War, that's provided for you here. I do have a video on Operation Shock and Awe, which was the first bombing phase of Iraq. It is not necessarily the bombing of Baghdad. I have searched exceptionally high and low for specifically bombing in between those dates in April in 2003 of Baghdad. And that video is almost impossible to find. You'll notice that I don't have video of that here, and that's because I can't locate any. So I have Operation Shock and Awe for you, which was how the Iraq War started. And the closest I could find for you is this from April 2003, is this video of a thunder run into Baghdad, which is a kind of military tactic that was being done, but it doesn't necessarily show the bombings, but it's as close as I could find to visually represent what was happening actually at the time in Baghdad or around Baghdad in April of 2003. But video of Baghdad in April of 2003 is weirdly difficult to come by. I've coming up across that quite a lot. So anyways, those are there for you. These are optional videos if you have additional interests in this topic. So anyways, moving on to the actual assignments. For Module 2, again, there are 2 Yellow Dig assignments. There's no blog this week. For the entire course, there are, like you had a blog in Module 1, there's 4 blog assignments across the entire course. So you only have 3 left for the entire assignment, and they're kind of scattered throughout the 9 weeks. So you don't have a blog assignment this week. You have 2 Yellow Dig assignments. One of them is on the Pride of Baghdad, the graphic novel, and then one of them is on June Jordan. So just like in the overview, like the module overview, I also will a lot of times provide specific overviews for each of the assignments. So for example, I provide some additional information here about the bombing of the Baghdad Zoo and what that looked like. And then if you remember from my previous video, I talked about when I was talking about the fear and loathing assignment. If you recall, the fear and loathing assignment, excuse me, was a single prompt Yellow Dig assignment. This week, we're getting into our first multi-prompt Yellow Dig assignments. It shouldn't be that difficult. The only difference is you just have to make sure that you're tagging the right tags in Yellow Dig that match the right question that you're answering. So when you come across these multi-prompts, and not every week is going to be the same. Sometimes it'll be a single prompt and sometimes it'll be a multi-prompt. So in the case that you have a multi-prompt, if you're like, okay, I'm going to be answering question B, right, which is about the theme of liberation in Pride of Baghdad, just make sure that you're tagging your post with that tag liberation. Or if you choose C, right, that you tag it with the one for C, which is, saying his name again wrong, Nico Henry Sean, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just an extra little thing that you have to look out for in these multi-prompts. In the June Jordan Yellow Dig assignment, excuse me, I provided some additional resources because, or not additional resources, but there's a little bit more robust of an overview because it's the Gulf War, so rather than the Iraq War. So I wanted to provide a little bit more historical background on it. So that's why this is a little bit longer here. And then when you get to the required resources here, you can see this is the poem. This is the article with the specific page range that you want to read. And this is her, the excerpt from the speech that you want to read. So these resources that were provided in the required resources are repeated here. These are optional here. So I like to also give, like, if there are things to listen to or watch. So there are original recordings of her giving the speech available. So you have a link to that. And actress Kathleen Chalfant does provide a reading of June Jordan's speech, and you have a video on that as well. So if you want to listen to it, if you want to watch the video, and those are things that you can comment on as well and examine as part of your Yellow Dig assignment, those are all here for you. And again, this one is also a multi-prompt. So again, you have the A, B, and C. So A is an opera because it has to do with the poem. B is Jordan's speech. And then C is specific to the racial lens question. So those are the assignments for this particular week. Now, very briefly, I just want to touch on the Yellow Dig assignment this week. And I also know how to modify point scores for Yellow Dig assignments if there are, say, any academic integrity questions, like that's an academic integrity violation, or, because that was also a question of mine, because Yellow Dig is essentially a gamification platform where it gamifies learning. So at what point does my question was, I understand it's gamification, but at what point does the instructor, or is the instructor able to intervene when there is an academic integrity, or, if there is an academic integrity question or concern, rather than just students just raking up points? What point does the instructor say, I have a concern about the quality of this work, and the full points I don't believe the student deserves the full points, and therefore when and how does the instructor intervene? So those were some of the questions that I had as the instructor. So that's all I have for now. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free, as always, to contact me. I promise I would not have this video be as long as my last week's. Otherwise, I hope everybody enjoys Pride of Baghdad this week, as well as June Jordan. And otherwise, I will continue to be in contact with everybody. All right. Bye-bye.